Welcome.
Welcome to DMs Discuss.
I'm Mike.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Scott.
Welcome to DMs Discuss, where this week DMs will discuss Homebrew, creating NPCs and quests. Today we'll be going through some, what are the core motivations and needs of NPCs, what do they value, and how to kind of create a framework for your NPCs and for the creatures that you create within the world you're building.
And as you do that, quests can kind of pop up as we explore the motivations and needs of NPCs. Eventually, people may want things done, and this gives your party something to do.
Yeah, that's true. NPCs are a huge part of the game, and there's definitely going to be times where you didn't prepare some. So it's always nice to kind of think ahead and at least plan out a couple NPCs that are going to be in the town before your players completely ignore them and decide to go bother, I don't know, the guy who cleans the outhouses.
Yeah. So let's talk about core motivations and needs. And this topic doesn't just apply to D&D, it applies to life in general. But when we talk about core motivations and need within the D&D framework, I think one of those motivators, that is probably what motivates your party, is loot and money and fame. So there may be some NPCs that are motivated and have a need to achieve a certain level of fame or to become rich or to, maybe just have enough to feed their family, and they're trying to figure out how to do that. What are some of your most memorable NPCs, Mike and Chris? What were their core motivations or needs?
I would say one of the classic ones and kind of center point of several of my campaigns has been, Dr. Crucial Colon, who is a wandering, powerful bard. And he is a character who essentially his wants and needs are simply to make a quick buck and be fairly well known, which often ends up with him being more of an infamous character and him constantly changing his identity, much to his own consternation.
Fame and money.
Yep.
Mike, how about you?
It's hard to say. A lot of the a lot of stuff I've been running recently has been obviously pre-written things. So for me, NPCs have been something I've had to read and kind of analyze and then try to get in the mindset of. But I think for me, I love playing characters like Freak and Myrtle from the Curse of Strahd campaign, who were just completely made up, just two people that you found in the middle of nowhere that were used for kind of character building and bonding and things like that.
Two children.
I liked creating these, their motivations and needs were just survival, right? And they kind of played on the emotions of the party to make the world better for themselves.
Yeah, and for a bit of context into what Mike's saying, Freak and Myrtle were two children whose parents, I believe, were killed in an attack. And our party ended up kind of taking them under our wing, and Freak was put into he always enjoyed the soldier aspect, and he wanted to be strong and powerful. So, Freak, our party ended up giving Freak some training with the local guards, and Myrtle was this, cute, scared little Freak's little sister. And it was really interesting. These weren't NPCs in the traditional sense that they were quest givers, but when Mike, you mentioned character building and things like that, NPCs don't always have to give quests. Sometimes they just give tremendous flavor to your world.
Yeah, and sometimes they do give quests, but your party ignores them, like when you were supposed to return them to their parents in Barovia. Or not to their parents, but to their caregivers in Barovia.
They have new, better parents now.
We're their parents.
Session 8 or 9 of a 60-session campaign.
Yeah, it was kind of difficult. We were their caregivers for a while, and we just, with everything going on in the world, we felt it was, and with everything we had to attend to, we felt it was kind of better to keep them under our wing. So, I don't know, Stockholm syndrome,
basically.
But yeah, core motivations. I mean, fame and money is one. Survival's another one. How about knowledge as one?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a pretty good one. Wizard's always looking to be learning.
Yeah, I think there are some characters that, people in your party will play, but also they'll meet in the world where they're just curious NPCs and they just want to learn about something and there's some mystery, and it's one of their core motivations is the pursuit of knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that one of my like most common ones for kind of like a standard NPC is honestly just sort of a desire for normalcy, where like adventurers are not the norm in the world when you think about it. There are farmers and miners and merchants and stuff. And so when something disrupts that way of life, it's the adventurers who they ask to do these things because they can't. They are commoners. They have like 4 health, even though that's a kind of an abstract concept. But your average person confronted with any sort of monster, goblin, banditry, or what have you is going to find someone else to go back to a normal way of life.
Yeah, I like that a lot, actually. That's a really good way of putting that.
Yeah, that pursuit of normalcy, that makes sense to me. And we talk about these concepts and we talk about them in really like big grandiose, like fame, power, money, survival, but motivations don't have to be these huge scale ideas. An NPC's motivation for or their sense of normalcy is like, hey, there's just this person and they used to really love this cupcake, and this cupcake was something that was, it's very nostalgic to them, but they only sell it in a certain place. And that could be that NPC's motivation, and they just want a cupcake. Other than that, they're happy go lucky. Everything's good. They're happy with their life. They're content, but they really want that cupcake and miss it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think there's a good segue into the next point is like, what do they value? What is something that brings them some sort of fulfillment? Do they value, money, power, etc., or do they value that cupcake?
Yeah, family is a common one. Common themes is rescuing a kidnapped family member or lover. Like try to help someone accomplish something who's in the family.
Understanding what has happened to a loved one that went missing. Maybe they have ended up dead, but
Yeah.
maybe the family just wants closure.
Yeah, there's stuff like recovery of like family heirlooms, things that are important to their past.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about like motivations and needs, sometimes those words they're a little bit heavier, motivation and need, but at its core, what do they want?
Yeah, and I think also, how do you choose that for particular NPCs? If you have a party that is like all happy go lucky and is just like in it for the adventuring and for the helping people, then like you might not want to throw an NPC who's all about like intrigue and political power and corruption at them. But if you have like I feel like you kind of want to mirror your NPCs like needs and wants and motivations with that of the party. I feel like if you know your party well, that's a good way to gauge it.
I think you can, but as we see in D&D, there's a lot of different, especially if your party has 5 or 6 people, there's going to be a lot of varying needs within your party. So I do like the idea of mirroring, but in a group of 6 people, there might be some people in that party that do like the political intrigue aspect, and let's
Oh,
say two
totally.
two out of the 5 people enjoy that. The other 3, if they're good, quote unquote good table mates, some of them will enable that and kind of put their own spin on what's actually happening here. So,
Yeah. Or they won't, and you can introduce like inter-party conflict by having them divided on whether or not they want to go do something, right?
yeah, and I think that can be fun. It obviously there's a line where it's like, okay, guys, this is a little too much, but there's definitely that inter-party conflict, and even throwing an NPC there that might not align with their values, and maybe that NPC can be fake. Maybe in the pursuit of fame and power and money, that NPC can be very charismatic and convincing, and is very deceptive, and you think that they're for the greater good, but really it's a play for power. So having that, the plot twists and the party being lied to. No one likes being lied to, but within the framework of this game, deception can be a very powerful DM tool.
Absolutely, especially if your party hates insight checking.
That is true.
Yeah.
Or the opposite thing when they insight check way too much and you have to have this stuff ready. And like, wait a minute, why is he paying us to? It's like, because it's his business and he cares about it. Okay.
So I think like all of these thoughts and thinking about what people want, what they need, what's their motivation, what drives them, this kind of lets you shape the way people act. Um, And in terms of for myself, when I pull from NPCs, I basically mirror people I've met in real life. You know, the tough, narcissistic boss, the very kind, helpful stranger, the sneaky, backstabbing, whatever. Um, we see examples of this in pop culture. We see examples of this in our own lives, right? Like the caring mother, or maybe somebody who's extremely tough. And I think taking my experience and mirroring that in some NPCs can have them feel more real.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything kind of needs to be based in some sort of reality, right? Like you can't have everything be just like completely over the top because then nobody identifies with those characters. It's really hard to identify with somebody's motivation if they're just like completely out there.
Yeah, and I think the more we kind of stick to reality, the more relatable it is, but it also makes it really impactful when we go way away from reality. So, for example, people are familiar with the concept of I'm going to use gravity. It doesn't really go with the NPC theme, but this can be applied to any aspect of NPCs where people are familiar with the concept of gravity. They're familiar with the concept of climbing the corporate ladder, let's say, climbing in an organization. And when some people meet somebody who just acts in this chaotic, unpredictable way, that can be really impactful to a party because they don't quite know what to think. And then you get this paranoia within the party where they're like, is this guy cool? Or what the hell is this guy doing? Or what the hell is this girl doing? And I think that can be so cool where they meet these people that normally they kind of act the way you would expect, but then they end up meeting these other people who are just like, I cannot get a read on this NPC.
Yeah, no, totally.
Have either of you had NPCs that were just extremely difficult for your party to read? And if so, how did you accomplish that?
I think our first run-in with the one that Chris has already mentioned in Crucial Colon was probably my best example. We
Tell
went
us about
to
that.
we were told to go find this person, and we had to ask them a couple of questions and figure out what was going on. And our fighter got like we knew essentially his brother was like a level 20 wizard, and we were going to find his brother who had like was more powerful than him and like all this other stuff. So we knew we were like level 6. We knew this was like a level 20 something. And our fighter just forgot and attacked him because he got bored of listening to him talk while we were questioning him. And we got mass polymorphed into cats, and then Scott got murdered.
Yeah, that
And
guy
I will
was.
say he was built like that because at his core he was a con man, and he wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily a bad person. Like his just small cons and stuff was what he found joy in.
Mhm.
So he talked very deceptively. He didn't want to admit who he was. He was hiding out like under a bridge in an invisible caravan. He was a very shady fellow, and his goal from that was to ascertain whether or not these people who came to find him wanted him because he was in trouble or not. So he
Yeah,
was being evasive.
that's an interesting word,
Yep.
evasive. Like having NPCs be evasive and dodge questions, and it's not necessarily a straight up deception, but it's more just dodging.
Exactly. It's the
Yeah.
classic, like, hey, are you this guy? It's like, who's
Who
asking?
wants to know?
Yeah, answering questions with questions. You want to piss your party off? Just do that for a while.
It's very fun.
So when we talk about characters and stuff like that, I think one thing, Mike, can I put you on the spot here?
Yeah.
Can you give me a bit of freak?
Freak. Uh, yeah. Wait, why? What's going on?
So that voice, when we talk about voice, it's not necessary as a DM. If you want to just use your speaking voice, it's perfectly fine. But having a voice like that for NPCs can definitely convey a message, right? So Freak always had this kind of, to me, anyways. He seemed a little guarded, a little unsure.
Yeah, I
The
would
way
say timid is how I was trying to play him like almost all the time.
Yeah, and I
Is
think that can come across, and having a voice for your NPCs can sometimes play into their deception or motivation, or at least hint to the party. Chris, do you have any voice that you throw out?
I have several voices because essentially there's only 5 voices you need to know in D&D, and then you can do any voice. And that, of course, is the classic 5 of shrill, gruff, old, goblin, British. and any other voice is just a combination of those.
Can you run those by me again? That was really quick. I didn't catch the
Sorry.
first.
Shrill, gruff, old, goblin, British.
Okay.
And once you master those, like any voice becomes possible. Like, do you want to do an Australian accent? It's just gruff British.
Yeah.
I've watched a similar video when it comes to voices on it was on YouTube, and they talked about a few things, which is like pitch. So do I talk down here or do I talk up here? Speed. Do I speak very slowly? Or am I just trying to rush you through things I need to get done? And then when you start to combine those, you can combine pitch with speed, and now the possibilities for a voice get bigger, and they can really make an NPC, like a tired soldier, like out on the battlefields every day. I just don't know what to do anymore. Or something like, hey, come here. Come. I have something that needs doing. Like those can incite different feelings in a person, and they make your NPCs a lot more flavorful and dynamic.
Totally. And that's something that like not everybody's going to do when they first start out, because it is intimidating to get at a table and just like make a fool of yourself sometimes. It definitely takes some practice. And also, like, I'm lazy a lot of the time. Like, I have a bunch of voices that I like doing, but if they don't fit the character, honestly, I bought a voice changer because it's very fun to do for online games.
Yeah, those are fun. I really like the robotic one.
Bingle's Muckbuckle.
Yeah,
he was my favorite.
The Warframe. Was he a Warframe?
He was a Warforged with
Warforged.
Warforged that was essentially a reincarnated gnome wizard in a Warforged body.
Yeah, the way
Love it.
I was one of those DMs who was very intimidated to do voices, and it stopped being intimidated when I just stopped giving a fuck, and when I just started to try them, right? And at first I started with, here's my normal talking voice, and then I started with the I guess what Chris mentioned as gruff, or that lower register, like, hey, come over here, and then to a higher pitched, kind, slow, like, hey, come over here. And that's how I started. And after that, you just start to tweak them a little bit, and they become so different. So if anyone's listening and you're intimidated to do a voice, practice in the shower. Just think about what that character would sound like, and just say normal sentences, or just say any sentence as that character. And that's usually how I kind of get into them.
Sure.
I think it adds so much.
Especially if you do it in a public shower.
Yeah, public shower would be the best, because it's just you having a conversation with yourself in 6 different voices.
Well,
if you ever want a shower stall to yourself, that is how you do it.
Or if you want to be locked up in a psychiatric center, that is also one step you can take.
Yeah. Or if you are like me and you are lazy and running games online a lot of the time, you can just go buy voice mod and it'll sound like this.
Yeah, the voice mod's got. Wait, can you do the spirit one? I really enjoyed that one, I think.
Which one was the spirit?
I think you had one that was a ghost or a spirit.
I'll find it, and I will cut in at some point.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, we can just continue here, but in terms of voice, I think you can hear from that little Warforged voice, it can make someone feel it can make your players feel very different. And I guess it comes back to the word immersion.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Or sometimes the players just use it to, try to throw it back at you. Like the time my group brought 10 NPCs with them on an adventure.
At that point I would have just, there's a magical spell that makes them all sound the same.
Nope. I made a voice for each and every one and made notes on it, and it would occasionally cut back to conversations between them.
Yeah, immersion is important.
Wow, that's I maybe just shit myself a little bit.
Yeah, you're welcome. I found it.
Yeah, that one's creepy, man. Anyways, so you have these NPCs, and you think about their motivations, their needs, their values. That gives you a framework for how to act, right? So we have some notes here where it's like, if they hate elves, they might refuse to give info while elves are near. If they love money, you're gonna have a hard time negotiating with them. They're not gonna bargain with you. And maybe using a voice to give them some flavor and some character. And once you have these NPCs, they can give quests.
I think some of them should, for sure, if you want your party to get anywhere.
That's definitely true. I mean, who else would give quests other than an NPC?
I feel like, like NPCs need to be able like having their motivations and their drive is important because that'll kind of dictate what kind of quests you give and what the rewards from those quests are. Like if it's like money, power, etc. is what all your party is after, then they're probably not going to take many quests or take many quests seriously that don't involve those things. Whereas if they are just like trying to get to their end goal and they know where they need to get, maybe you can have quests where the reward is more information that will get them towards that goal or like the information around the location of a thing that they're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, what is that NPC looking for? Are they looking for knowledge? Are they looking for money? Are they looking for um, you to assassinate somebody in a position of power that they feel is harmful to society? That can kind of shape your quests, and throughout your time, you're going to have these pivotal NPCs that might be, there are NPCs that the party will interact with more than once, but there are some NPCs that might just be this one-off, like I said, gather a cupcake. Um, and I know, Chris, can you talk about how you do quest creation for one shots?
Yeah, sure. So I actually use a interesting method to generate both the NPCs and the quest, where I essentially just wrote down a roll table of essentially 20 different types of NPCs, like mayor, holy figure, farmer, blacksmith, like different just occupations and things people could be, and then just a bunch of different quest motivations like recover lost artifact, transport goods, defeat bandits. And the last one is I just have a column of twists, which is, like the quest giver can't provide the reward they promised. Uh, they were actually a fae in disguise, things like that, which then kind of gives me like a, sort of a beginning, middle, and end, like, why did you meet this person? And then kind of with those building blocks, you kind of flesh in the details.
Yeah, and if you're sitting there going, well, what the hell's a roll table? It's essentially a numbered table that has various options, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever, and various options, and you roll a dice to just randomly generate what you want to do. And you can create these on your own. You can look these up. There are various resources. If you just put like quest roll table, you'll probably find some of them. But as Chris said, like NPC, what are we actually like? What's the action? What are we actually doing? And then what's the conclusion? And it doesn't always have to be a twist. It could be like one of the conclusions could be like they get exactly what they needed, or the NPC is feeling generous and gives them an extra 50 gold. So that's a cool way to just have something at your fingertips when you just need some filler stuff.
Yeah, and I will say not all the twists are like at the end of it. Some of them can be stuff like you decide where you put them. Could be in the middle, like, if you're transporting goods, you'd hope it'd be more interesting than just we travel for a day and then drop them off. So, what's the twist there? Maybe get attacked by bandits, maybe,
Yeah.
The cart breaks down, all sorts of things can happen.
Yeah, I love using roll tables for stuff
Yeah,
like that
for
as
sure.
well. Just having a bunch of encounters written down and prepared and ready to go so that when they're traveling, I can like roll a d20, and if it's under 5, then you guys are running into something. Like that kind of stuff can be fun and add challenges, and
Yeah.
also like using travel time to get your party to like tell you how they're aiding in travel or things like that, and then using those roles to inform what the encounters look like.
Yeah, and these quest roll tables can be used. You don't have to use them on the fly. You can, but you can use them in preparation. So sometimes I've used roll tables in
Oh yeah.
preparation for a session, and sometimes I've used roll tables in a session. I've been DMing Strixhaven, and I had the characters roll a d6 to determine like what courses they're taking. So you can also kind of use these roll tables on the fly if you just if they're traveling and you want a random encounter, you can quickly roll a little quest there where they pop into some talking bear and it has a quest to do whatever based on the roll
Yeah, for
tables.
sure.
So
And especially like they don't even have to be followed exactly. They can just be enough inspiration to get you thinking about what a possible quest could be. And maybe, you go off what the role was, but it at least got the gears turning to come up with a quest. Because sometimes it's hard just thinking like, what is a quest? Just out of nowhere.
Yeah, for sure.
well, yeah, let's do it. NPC is a bear. What does
Honey.
this bear want? Sure. Where's their honey
Up
available?
on a cliff guarded by night bees.
Okay. And any particular twists in regards to this bear?
Why can't the bear go get it themselves is the question.
Night bees.
Cool. So that's an example of 15-second quest creation, and it could really be as simple as that. And why can't the bear get it himself? Chris said night bees. I would say maybe it has an injured leg. That's an example of how, at a starting point, you can think really simple and then go from
Alternate
there.
twist, it's a con. The bear and the bees are in it together.
Yeah, night bees only make honey out of adventurers, so.
And then you can make a pun about, the bear and the bees talk. I don't know what that would entail. I think it's very different than the birds and the bees, but I have no clue. And then your player's grown like that, which is awesome.
I mean, my
as a
initial
DM.
thought of a talking bear is that he has a deep, soothing voice and also constantly says "bear with me" every 2 sentences.
That's
I still think
enjoy
that my favorite pun from one of Chris's games was the one where he had a clown that was trying to turn into a bear, and the entire quest of us running around for 3 hours and trying different things and get like polymorphing and all of these other things was that he couldn't be turned into a bear ever because he was unbearable.
I was watching that on Twitch and I thought it was hilarious. I loved it.
Yeah, it was pretty fantastic.
Yeah, and it's up to you what kind of campaign you want to run. So obviously we're talking about some silly stuff, this bear and this, and Chris tends to run games that are more on the silly side. Like they have substance, there's good storyline there, but Chris's DM style is a little more lighthearted and juxtaposition with Mike's, which is a little bit more gritty and serious. And depending on the game you want to play, that can influence your NPCs and quests, right? Are these quests, something like go grab the honey for this bear? Or are these quests, go and topple a civilization for power and fame? It really depends what kind of game you want to run. And I think what do you think about that in terms of quests? How do quests shape the overall feel of your game?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Because, depending on, like, what's the state of the world, is this one of those, like, global catastrophe kind of situations where everyone knows this thing, whatever you're doing is, like, happening? Like, they're not going to be asking for the cupcake then. They're going to be like, I need ways to protect my home and family.
Yeah, for sure. I think
Yeah.
it goes both ways. Like the setting of the campaign really kind of determines what kind of quests you're going to run, but then the little side quests and stuff you do along the way can shape the party and help build bonds and things like that. So I think you need a mix of both. It can't always be dark and gritty and like overwhelming. So sometimes you do need that, like, I just need this fucking cupcake, or like I'm gonna end it. Like sometimes you just need
Whoa. I thought it can't always be dark and gritty, and then we got this guy who's suicidal over a cupcake.
You get to get him his
Wow.
cupcake.
I thought that was gonna be a fun quest there. But yeah, no, I agree, and that's why I really enjoy playing in both your games, because it scratches a very different itch for me. Chris's game is that more comedic, lighthearted, and then Mike's game is like, well, let's get down to business. If I don't focus, I'm gonna get fucked up. So yeah, really thinking about how your players want to play, and you as a DM too. Like, you're important to some degree. What kind of session do you want to run, and are your players into that? That's the whole compatibility we talked about in session 0 episodes. So bringing it back to quests. So when we think about creating the quest, we talked about NPC, what they need to do, and then possible twists, etc. What kind of rewards do you guys give for quests?
I think it depends on, like, the scale of the quest. Like, I would say, there's, like, the small scope ones that can be essentially done alongside the main objective. Like, someone wants to just get something from a town, they want you to bring something to somewhere where it's not the main thing, then it can be a pretty simple reward. Just, a few gold pieces, maybe like a favor or something they'll owe you, or just some information. But if it's a major side quest taking up the whole session, maybe 2 sessions, then you'd start thinking about large sums of money depending on the player level, and like magic items being a reward.
I'll throw one more reward in there that it happens, but I don't know if we identify it as a reward, but it definitely is. We talked about loot, we talked about items and money. Allyship. There is a place on the character sheet for allies and enemies, and it doesn't get used a lot, But there have been times where in Chris's campaign where we did a few things for some people, and then they offered us, hey, for 200 gold, our group will do a flyby of the southern area for you, and we'll scout and bring back information. So a reward for some of these quests could be that you align yourself with certain factions, or you align yourself with certain people who can get shit done for you. It's that favor
Yeah,
Chris
that's
talked about.
definitely a good point, and something I really enjoy doing in my campaigns is, maybe if, I add some NPCs around, they start talking to them, they get a quest for someone, they might decide to help them out. And it's a running theme I have where I have a list of like all these allies they've gained. I know like in the higher level campaign now, they have quite a long list where they have like a ship captain, a traveling merchant, a potion brewer, like someone who does imports of elven goods into like their guild store, who like I never planned on any of this stuff, but after like they went out of their way to like befriend and help these NPCs, I was like, you know what? Not only did you do that, but they're gonna stick around. They're gonna help you out because they're thankful.
Yeah. Let me throw a quick ally in there to add to your list, because I think it's one of the most impactful allies and something you'll see in almost every campaign: blacksmith or armor smith.
Always good to have.
Always fun to have.
Yeah. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts,
so I
Mike?
think Chris summed it up pretty well. The one thing I would say is that when you are planning stuff out, quests need to have rewards, but they don't always need to come from the quest directly. You can use quests to send people to places and reward them for what happens there. So like you might be asked to go find out what happened to somebody's nephew. And the reward for that might be like 50 or 100 gold each or something like that, whatever they have, or free lodgings whenever you're in the town. Um, Things like that could be the actual reward, but going to the place, there might be a magic item that somebody's been looking for. There might be more jewels or gold or things like that at the place where they're being held. So you can work rewards into um, like the actual substance of the quest as well as being like the actual material reward at the end of a quest. So as a DM, you have the flexibility of adding things in both places, right?
Yeah, and I think understanding that it's not always about the reward, sometimes it's about the journey, and there are things along the way they'll encounter that is rewarding for players. So it's not necessarily that we get a cool item. Because what happens, I think, is if every quest results in a cool item, it really lessens the excitement around receiving items. Not to say that it should be a low magic and you should never give out magic items, but if every quest leads to a rare magic item, there's a little bit less excitement. It's about finding the balance
Yeah,
there.
that's also setting the expectation, right? That if you're sending people on quests and they don't get a magic item at the end of it, then they're going to be pissed at you. So you definitely want to mix it up and not have every reward be the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. And sometimes you want people to just do it because it's what drives their character. Sometimes there might be a poor beggar that just wants some fish, and he maybe has nothing to offer. But for some players, the reward there is being able to help
Yeah.
that person. So, yeah, concepts you can play with in terms of quests.
Yeah, and I think there's one more important reward that we haven't touched on yet. And I'm surprised we haven't because it's what we all talk about every time we do a quest. And it's whether or not a player advances in level at the end of said quest.
Hey, Mike, did I level up?
No. I haven't even started the campaign yet, Scott.
So,
I'm starting at level 4. It's in my backstory.
yeah, I'm extremely advanced. I'm taking 5 feats. That cool? Thanks.
Yeah, you just have 5 feet and no hands.
Yeah.
But yeah, leveling up. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on like what kind of system you're running. If you're milestoning or experience based, because if you're running experience, you may not even see the level coming. It's just like, oh wow, come to think of it, it's about that time.
I'm going to be extremely judgmental here. I hate
Oh yeah,
experience
it's very silly.
leveling.
It's too much to track.
I just, oh.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah. But when we talk about quests, we talk about quests, and a lot of our talk here has been about the singular quests. But sometimes there's these quest chains, which is like, your quest is to slay this dragon. And that might require them to take a lot of steps. You don't just get teleported to a dragon lair and kill the dragon. You're going to have to find it. You're going to have to talk to people. You're going to have to figure out what it is. And along the way, there might be other quests. But your main quest is to slay this dragon. And in doing that and completing that set of quests, we talk about milestone leveling. Killing the dragon would be a milestone. And that should give your party a level up, in my opinion. And I think that's one of the best non-in-game rewards is leveling up, because players can take that away and start to think about their characters and what feat am I going to take, and I'm so excited for the next session, and I get to, there's a power spike in this level, etc.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing I enjoy
Yeah, for
doing
sure.
is kind of like giving players an optional side quest of like a enemy that would be above the difficulty they'd normally face, and having it as kind of an option for an early level. It's just like, make it very clear to them with like, yeah, like there's something real bad out there. It's got a lot of adventures, and kind of make that opt-in challenge for them to be like, you know what, maybe we can fight a dragon now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's been one of the things that's been really fun about playing in your games is the like, oh, he said there's something real bad over there, so we might die, everybody. But if we don't die, there's a good chance we get a level out of this. So
Yeah, this is where you see who's a gambler and who's not. On one hand, you might level up. On the other hand, you might level all the way down.
yeah, you might be rolling a new character. But if you roll a new character, it's probably at a better level. So
Yeah. No, I think
yeah.
that's a cool concept. Like, and I think you touched on something that maybe isn't obvious. Your party will not and should not have to take every quest you put in front of them. Sometimes the risk and the reward are just not worth it for the party. And it's totally okay for them to say, no, we're not going to help you. If you can sweeten the pot, we'll be in the inn. And I think that's a cool. I think as a DM, we should be open to some of that.
I know another useful thing that is kind of more of a reward for the DM themselves that you can give for side quests is sometimes they can be really useful for kind of nudging the group back in the right direction, because there may be times when they're not quite sure what to do next and they're not seeing an obvious thing, and having a side quest that through one way or another reveals some piece of critical information to them, or reveals the existence of some location they may have missed, is a useful way to kind of like give them something to do while not like telling them what they're supposed to be doing next. Is like, by the way, there's also this other cult thing over there, so watch out.
Yeah, or even sometimes going on a quest, like we talk about cult. Maybe they go on a quest to retrieve an item at a camp, and that item actually isn't there. But at the camp, they find a map, and that map has other cultist locations. So no, that could be the quote unquote reward.
Yeah, now they've picked up another objective for their campaign, right?
Yeah, and these are when we talk about hooks and plot hooks, and just leaving something like that can leave a very open world to be explored. It's up to the party. Do they want to start to investigate these locations, or do they have bigger fish to fry?
Exactly.
Yeah, I always like to try to have multiple streams of like ways people could possibly go. I've never been a fan of like railroading, so I like to try to leave stuff as open as possible.
Yeah, there is something to be said about guiding your players and trying to do so in a way where it's not extremely obvious railroading, because there are plot points in our games that we do want to reach eventually, and sometimes just giving players that sense of urgency. And you don't have to just say, oh yeah, you get teleported to the dragon's lair, but you could say that you're getting reports that a lot more people are dying around this area, and the towns are asking for help, and they're increasing the amount of reward, and that might motivate your players to go and take
Yeah.
that quest. It's still their choice at the end of the day, but you're kind of nudging them like, huh?
Exactly. Like, or if people are traveling and you want to kind of like have a really cool lead in to like a primary antagonist of your campaign, you can just like describe like a windmill in the background to get your characters to go there.
I do like the notion of, and Mike did this during Strahd too, have some evil force just apparate, fuck with your party a little bit, and just leave. It creates this sense of tension. It creates this sense of, who is this person and what the hell? And now I want to learn more about them, because like leaving that air of mystery can kind of, your players can end up showing you what quests you should make, because they start to explore particular areas, and I'm like, well, they're really interested in this guy, so let's make an information quest about what his motives are.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a sense of overwhelming dread the entire time is exactly what I was going for. So that's perfect.
Yeah, that can be that can be really cool in a darker, grittier campaign. That sense of, yeah, there's some evil stuff going on, and we have no clue what it is. When we talk about NPCs and quests, these NPCs and quests, is what's shaping your world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the quests and the NPCs that give them are like probably the most important part of a long running campaign. Because they are the tools that you use for exposition and the things that you use to um like further your party through your campaign, right?
Yeah. And these quests and this all of this information, can apply to long running campaigns, but you can take a lot of this and instead of creating multiple NPCs with lots of complex motivation and value and, crazy voices, if you're writing a one shot, you can just focus on one quest. Pick one NPC, what are their core motivations, and the entire session revolves around this singular quest.
Yeah. And that's what we'll be talking about next week.
Yeah, next week we're going into Homebrew writing a one shot. That's exciting. I love it. I love writing one shots. It lets me, I think in a campaign, you're kind of in that setting and the things you write have to make sense in that setting. But when it comes to writing one shots, I love being all over the place. You guys have played
Oh,
it.
no consequences.
No,
It's the
there isn't.
best.
Yeah. And I love giving out super powerful items at the end because chances are they're never going to use them.
For sure. So tune in next episode to learn all about writing a one shot. In the interim, if you need to slide to a DM's DMs, you can DM us on Insta, Twitter, or Facebook at DMs Discuss, or email us at dmsdiscuss@gmail.com.
And you don't need the town crier to tell you when our new episodes are out. Follow us in your favorite podcatcher app to be notified of new episodes.
We hope that this helps in your quest to becoming an awesome DM. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and as always, check the show notes for links and other fun stuff. We'll catch you after a long rest.